at everybody's disposal. This event has actually grown through the decades tremendously.
It has. 15 men lined up in Ashland in 1869. Tom Burke drew his boot across a dirt road, said, "Gents, that's the starting line," and 15 people headed off towards Boston. That event in 1897 was really started because of the Olympic Games, and it was at the Olympics that a new event was founded, and it induced the Greeks. Let's lay out here.
What a tremendous surge here at the finish line. The applause behind us. Now, these people are not going to see a thing at the finish line for another 2 hours, yet they are applauding and cheering right behind us, Larry Rawson, as these runners 26 miles away are taking off.
Look to see its humanity. I've seen headshots, Leander, of showing, it looks like a rhythmic bouncing as people go up and down.
And you can see people waving their hats, trying to get someone's attention at home. I'm here, I made it, I'm at the start. Now this is where a runner really has to be careful. It's very frustrating to wait several minutes to get to the front of the pack. And they have a tendency maybe to take it out a little too hard because I feel they've wasted so much time behind the starting line. Now, obviously, this is not a problem for our elite runners who are out in front.
I'd like to pay tribute here while we can. It will be very difficult for us to keep up on the Masters competitors. That phrase means athletes, men and women, 40 years of age and over. And we've got some top talent in the race, led by Mexico's Antonio Villanueva, who's run 2:13:41 for the marathon. There you see the Masters age group records. New Zealand's Jack Foster in a legendary time done almost 14 years ago. That's an average, 2:11 of a 5-minute mile pace, and the man was 41 at the time. And the other record you saw there of John Gilmore from Australia, he's over 60, and he went 6 minutes, 8 seconds per mile for 26 miles.
To put those Masters in perspective, we have 1,942 open men runners. Those are men under 40.
These guys don't want to go out too fast. You have to hold yourself back. You are positively reining yourself in early in the race if you're smart.
It's just beautiful to watch the fluid motion. It's almost like they're the head of a serpent. The best runners in front leading the way with the masses, the fans, in close pursuit. Now this is called Diamond Vision, and what they did at Copley Square, so that the people don't have to wait 2.5 hours at Copley Square, which is just around the corner from this finish line, they can watch the race on this giant screen, much like you see in your ballpark. And they are seeing some of the technology as they show you through special effects who the front runner is, and it's certainly how the course is shaping up.
Leander, while we have a second, I'd like to mention the top women in the field. I don't want to leave them out. Evie Palm, a cook from Sweden, who has run 2:38 for the marathon, is over 40 years of age, is in the race. And also, I'd like to mention the all-time world record for a woman over 40 is the legendary Joyce Smith, who is on 4 Olympic teams for Great Britain. She ran 2:29 and change for the marathon, over 40. That's 5 minutes and 42 seconds per mile for that young lady, who at the time had a 17-year-old daughter.
Says something for motherhood.
It does.
The Boston Marathon is well underway. We are going to break away, and when we come back, our runners will move from Hopkinton to Ashland. Don't go away.
From the start in Hopkinton.
Our runners have headed into Ashland. There are 2 water stops in Ashland. The first one at 2.1 miles, the second one at 4.9 miles. And on a day like today, they're probably not reaching for the water just yet. But Larry Rawson, if you would please give us an evaluation that the runners are taking of themselves. What are they, in a computer-type way, saying about themselves?
Leander, it's very early in the race, and they've come off the hills fast. I'm sure they're trying not to go too fast. It's something you should do. Jeff Smith did that last year and blew himself right out of the race. They're asking themselves, how do I feel? And while we give a second there, you see the wheelchair athletes. And has George Murray been able to lose Andre Fige? It looks like he has. They are right now at 6.5 miles into the race. And he has got to put distance between him because he's going to lose ground in the Newton Hills. And that is, I believe, Murray. The headband looks like it's gone. Let's see if that's the new machine he's got. We are looking at Andres Fige, guys. I think that is Fige from Canada. On the upper left-hand part of his chest is that maple leaf of Canada. And I'm not sure he has the lead. Yeah, I guess he does. We have the Mercedes out in front. It looks like it's Fige ahead of Murray at 1/4 the distance of the race so far. That is a surprising development. because of the speed that Murray has coming downhill. Back to the male leaders. The pack's large. Looking at their leg action, I'm struck with two things. Either it's a very conservative pace, or they are into a headwind out there. The wind is swirling here in Boston, but based on the flags, it is my guess here that they are running into a slight headwind. At the far right of your screen, now he's the second farthest over. Going right into the left is Peter Fitzinger. He has blue shorts on, he has a little wisp of a beard, and out in front, almost on the crown of the road, just to the right of those two yellow markers, is Rob DiCastella, the most feared marathoner in the world since 1981, the world champion in '83.
The course thins out, obviously, throughout the 26 miles. At what point will we see this group diminish even further?
I think you're going to see talent stay up there based upon the pace, well up possibly into the Newton Hills. And at that point and early before that, I should back up and say maybe from 10 miles on, you'll start to see surging tactics if someone is not comfortable and maybe feels he should be accelerating that pace.
That certainly will be a contrast from 1985's Boston Marathon. This field is up there. When we come back, we'll see if the field thins anymore, and we'll check in on the women to see who's out in front. Is Ingrid Christensen the favorite at 6.7 miles? Stay with us.
We are just a couple of minutes into this 90th running of the 1986 Boston Marathon. There you see the lead pack with DiCastella leading the pack, and George Hirsch, it's pretty clear that he's running the kind of race he likes to run from the front.
Well, exactly, and everybody in this pack is doing one thing at the moment, and they're keying on Deke. He's the big man. Of course, physically he's the big man, but in marathon circles, he's clearly the big man. Take Barrios. He's right there. He's never run a marathon before. He's come into this race with a very simple game plan, and that's to sit on Deke's shoulder. He worked that out with his coach, Rich Castro, and it's perfect.
This is the next time we'll get a chance to see the competitors coming around the corner at Ashland at the 4-mile mark. We'll be checking in with them just momentarily. And Dr. Thompson, we talk about running the marathon, but it's more than just running down the center of that road. We're talking about cutting corners.
That's right. If you watch the center line, you'll see that the runners go back and forth across that center line. That gives you a sense as to which way the corners are going, because they'll make up a straight line and go right to it. A lot of people remember Jeff Smith having trouble in New York simply because he didn't take the shortest distance between two places, a straight line.
Perfect example right there as you see them cutting that corner and coming out in front. Any surprises so far, Dr. Thompson?
Well, I'm a little surprised that Deke is leading the race, DiCastella is leading the race, because there may be a headwind looking at the flags here in Boston, and it's a lot of work to lead the pack into the headwind. Just like in car racing, you can get something out of drafting on another runner. Psychologically, it's hard to push that pace as well.
All right, let's go to Leandra and Larry with race coverage.
I think we should mention that today is Patriots Day, and it is a holiday here in Boston, and that's why the marathon is traditionally run. It's the celebration of the battles of Lexington and Concord, and in Maine and Massachusetts, they celebrate this holiday by taking Monday off. So there's a marathon run. Why not? It's patriotic.
Excellent opportunity to forget your cares and woes and turn out here to cheer on other people who probably could not run as well if this were simply a race that turned into a time trial. On the red in your screen to the left on the picture, there in all red is Dave Gordon, who should be a factor in this race, has pointed towards it for about 6 months and has trained injury-free now since he just missed making our Olympic team finish 4th. You see DiCastella out there. I believe that's Joseph Kipsang, former Iowa State graduate from Kenya, out running up next to DiCastella. Running directly on that yellow marker is Greg Meyer with a Brooks on his shirt. And the lead pack is pretty much the talent that you would expect it to. It will no doubt thin out, but you know, I invite you to stay with us. If you haven't watched a marathon before, we'll try and make it interesting, point out all the nuances to you. As you come up to the next 10 miles, it can be great theater as these athletes start to monitor each other and gauge exactly who seems comfortable to them. They'll listen to each other's breathing, and they'll decide whether in the next few miles to start attacking each other by putting on what they call surges.
I think we've seen an interesting placement of the runners in terms of the street. On the straightaways, they tend to stay on the yellow line, but then as they know the turns are coming up so that they don't really have to make a sharp 90-degree turn, they actually traverse across the street.
You can get an idea of where the road's going by watching which side of the street they're on. Exactly. And that, Leander's a good point, because these roads are certified. They are measured by bicycle wheels. 3 separate tests are done. And in effect, this road is calibrated for the correct distance of 26 miles, 385 yards. It's just a guess on my part, but Bill Rogers is probably back in that second pack that you see directly behind him. He said he's going to try and run his own race. He wants to keep the top guys in close contention. I might add this. He is a wily coyote fox of a guy. And if you talk to people who have known him for years, they will tell you that Rogers will say he hopes to be in the top 10. He really hopes to be in the top 5. And that's the way he keeps the pressure off. He always backs it up just a little bit and hopes to run a little bit better.
With 26.2 miles worth of running, it's also 26.2 miles worth of television. A slight apology here for some of the technical blips that are happening on your screen, and that's because we do have 26 miles to send signals through, and there is some interference.
There he is, originally a native of Brisbane, now living in Canberra, Australia, coached by a world-renowned coach, Pat Clohessy. He has remained injury-free since 1980, he said, and Bill Rogers has been just about the same way. It's been one of the keys. Greg Meyer, who's right at the right in the screen there, that you see with the black shorts and the silver top, has had his injury problems, and that's frequently the key to being a successful and wealthy marathoner at the world-class level. They have passed the 3.25 mile mark now. This pace looks very moderate to me. This is not a barn-burning pace. I'll go out on a limb and say that. And when we get our first real split at the 4 mile mark, we'll give you a breakdown and interpret what this means. If there is a headwind that comes in here, it will throw all the bets off, and it probably, even though the Hancock's happy to give it out, probably save them a lot of money because there may not be any world best here today running into a strong headwind.
You had mentioned that the course is carefully calibrated and that they use bicycle wheels. There was a modification in the course this year, as you pointed out in our course description. Since we now end at Copley Square, they had to move up the starting line 100 or so feet and make some changes right here in Ashland. They took a turnout that used to exist. So if you're a true viewer of the Boston Marathon, it will look a little bit different, particularly at the finish, but there are some changes here in Ashland.
Interesting development. I've just been notified that, yes, that is the case. They are running into a headwind. And I was just trying to gauge the leg turnover because it would have been faster by maybe 8 or 10 seconds per mile had it been at their backs. I'm going to watch here to see if Deke tries to lead the whole way or just do what he's doing rather than simply tuck in. I will be surprised if he decides to forge everything out here all alone. It would be a mistake. This plays into the hands of the athletes who are not quite as fit as Di Castella is. And I think if the pace at all is relatively slow, a guy by the name of Arturo Barrios, who went to Texas A&M, will become more of a factor.
14:20 at 3 miles.
Very reasonable pace. That's about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. To give you an idea, last year with a tailwind, Jeff Smith went out and absolutely destroyed himself, running just better than 4 minutes and 40 seconds per mile. So these athletes at 4:48, considering the steepness of the hills, are running in control of themselves. 60 degrees is kind of warm. The humidity's more moderate than it is low. The cloud cover may be one of the saving graces today.
I'd like to emphasize, for the average person who does not run marathons, cannot string together a bunch of 4+ miles, 4 minutes and 40 seconds as opposed to 4:48. That is such a world of difference, isn't it?
It is, Leandra. It's only 2 seconds per lap around a standard high school quarter-mile track. But when you're going over 26 miles, these athletes are running exactly on the threshold of what we call oxygen jet, where they're too fast. And they're trying to find that degree of comfort I spoke of, where they're comfortable with themselves and they're gauging whether the pace is too fast. Success in marathons generally go to the person who acts with discretion in the first half of the race. Here you see on the left of your screen, from Japan, their best runner, who has twice been under 2 hours and 10 minutes, and he lives in the southern part of Japan's biggest island, Honshu. That is Kunimitsu Itu, and it was placed among the top 3 in the Great Fukuoka Marathon each year. There you see Di Castella, others looking around, Greg Meyer off to his right, Arturo Barrios there in the middle of the pack. Again, everybody's kind of checking around now. We're now 4 miles into the race, almost 4. They're now looking around saying who is up in the lead there.
And this is our second pack right behind our lead pack. Now you can see a little bit better in perspective. And it is an international feat.
Leander at 4 miles into the race as the rest of the troops, so to speak, have poured out of Hopkinton and are now making their way. They're still feeling fresh. Interestingly, look, since we've just been away for a few minutes, at how this pack has narrowed down. You're looking at Kunimitsu Itu on the right. Joseph Kipsang in the back. Can't see his number. That is strictly a guess. I could be wrong. Arturo Barrios wearing the Puma on his chest. And Peter Fitzinger off to the right wearing number 11. Rob DiCastella on the left of the screen. 18 minutes and 30 seconds. They fled by the 4-mile mark in. Look at the comfortable pace. DiCastella struck me, and I'd like to add this, as being extremely confident, sure of himself, and serene as he approached the race. Frequently, the athletes get a little uptight. They're nervous about everything. He seemed very, very collected compared to people I've met in the sport over the last 15 years.
At this juncture, the pack has thinned considerably. We now have a front-running group of 5, then there's an intermediate group of another 4 or 5, and then there's a real strong third group behind them. And all of those athletes have to be considered still in the race.
Leandra, based on the time that we had, if it was accurate, and I'm beginning to question the 14:20 that I had, because 14:20 and 13:80 comes out to a 4:10 mile pace. Something's wrong on the timing there. We'll try and get that squared away. Either the 18:30 is off. These guys are running just slightly faster, watching their leg turnover, than they did for the first couple of miles. And if I'm right in that assessment, and I really believe that, you'll notice the gulf that has been opened up between the pack directly behind and the group that was all together just a mile ago. I think DiCastella has begun to pick up the pace. I'm sorry, that is Abraha Arrega, who has run up in the lead, has run 2:16 for a marathon in the past, along with Fitzinger. That is E2 up there running with him. Greg Meyer to the right is in the second pack, as is Dave Gordon that I can see.
Dave Gordon, of course, in all red and back, and Kinomitsu Itu in all white up front with the red sash going across his chest. But our leader is Rob DiCastella. Everybody calls him Deke. And with the headwind, is he wise to stay out in front so long?
Depending on how strong it is, you know, he should not feel the pressure of having to force the pace the whole way. He's talented enough to sit back there and bury those guys, or try to, in the Newton Hills where he should be quite strong. I don't know why. Maybe it's just this level of confidence I spoke of, that he should be out in the lead and he's still comfortable.
People who have run Boston before don't have a problem with the crowds. These people do. When I say they have a problem with the crowd gives them a false sense of adrenaline. They're cheering and roaring. You have a tendency to puff up your chest and run a little harder. And, of course, you're going downhill, so you're going a little faster. And you think, gee, it took me so long to get through the start, so you're pushing it a little bit more. And, by gosh, you might be dead by the time it comes to getting to those Newton Hills.
For these runners, the first half of this race is particularly easy. There's not the normal stress of pushing that road underneath you out from underneath you, because it falls away. You're going downhill or there's flat stretches. Very, very few uphill phases. They will reach 16 miles in this race and have dropped 450 feet of elevation. But then potential for disaster strikes if you've gone out too fast.
Rob DiCastella is still out in front at this juncture. When we come back, we will see how many runners still will hold on to this front pack. They've now bunched up again, and we have about 9 people still very much in the running to win $30,000 in a Mercedes-Benz here at Boston.
Marathon, for example, running for $25,000 plus in prize money.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. George Hirsch, we look at Deke. He is in the lead now. Let's talk a little bit about his preparation. You had a chance to sit and chat with him.
Yeah, Deke has come very, very well prepared for this race because of the course and the downhills. Deke has come to this race 5 or 6 pounds lighter because he knows that that's going to be a lot easier. The shock of the downhills can really do damage to a runner. And, of course, this has happened to many, including the great Greta Weitz, who walked off the course when she was at world record pace after 23 miles because her legs just cramped up.
Dr. Thompson, the race, the hills, they're coming up. Is this in their mind right now? Are they already starting to think about the hills now that the downhill portion is coming to an end?
Well, you've got to have a mental picture as to what's coming up. So I do think that they are thinking about it and preparing themselves mentally for the difficulty that comes up. The point that George Hirsch made is a very good one. This is a tough course on the legs. It's up and down. I can remember myself from some of my competition going down the stairs backwards the day after the Boston Marathon. It really tears up your thighs.
There we have it. There you see the leaders again. Deke continues to lead. DiCastella of Australia, the lead pack of the 1986 Boston Marathon. Let's go back down to Leandra Riley and Larry Rawson with play-by-play.
As you mentioned, the leaders have exited from Ashland. They are moving now into Framingham. They're between 5 and 10 miles now on the course. And a marathon is approximately 40,000 foot strokes, and we're maybe 25% through that. So they've made approximately 10,000 steps to get to this point in time.
The pace through 5 miles looks to me to be accurate. That we had hoped to get an accurate figure. The 5-mile checkpoint here has been hit in 24 minutes, 11 seconds. That is a 2:08 marathon pace. Let me quickly run through for you the developments in the last 25 years in running. 25 years ago, what you actually had in the sport, I can best equate to a bowling shoe. If you've ever gone bowling, you put a layer of leather down, you had no cushioning, nothing. This thing is a 4-meshed, I can call this really tights for the feet. Look at how it stretches. This is what Ingrid Christensen wore in Chicago. It's what she is wearing today. It is her exact size. That is a size 5, and it weighs 5 ounces.
Let me add, there are not shoelaces. Those are buckles. You just snap them in. So
that's right. This is called ethyl vinyl acetate, and they have a layer in here in men's and women's shoes that Nike makes. This is a gas tubing that they put in, and it allows this acetate to return back to its normal size after being pressured down in the feet. You'll notice how this is scalloped, if you can see. Notice how the foot sits low in the sole itself, and it allows this to be wrapped around like a sock. The shoe you're seeing here, made by Adidas, is what Rob DiCastella is wearing today. This is about 6 ounces, and these two shoes together, I might add, I don't want to get this point missed, weigh between 3.5 and 4 slices of bread. What you're seeing here is another shoe. This is what Greg Meyer will be wearing. This has that same urethane that I mentioned before, this acetate. And what they did is put a little bit of rubber for better traction on the bottom. They pull a presser down, and they put the rubber right on over the ethyl vinyl acetate.
Hold it. Ethyl vinyl acetate. I don't think these guys should step on any live cigarette butts. They might go up in smoke here.
No explosion necessary, but we've come a long way. Notice what they've even done here. They've cut this away. This shoe I was referring to that Deke is wearing is scalloped away on the inset of his shoe just to save a couple of fractions of an ounce.
Let's go to our splits now, 6.2 miles.
All right, 30 minutes and 8 seconds for the first 10,000 meters of the race. They passed by 6 miles in 29 minutes and 6 seconds. I don't know the degree of the headwind, but Leander, I'd like to quickly add the pace seems moderate. I think Deke is feeling comfortable. I'm a little surprised if there isn't much of a headwind that he has not tucked in and let somebody else lead through the race. Everybody else behind hopes that he runs the first half slowly. It will make for, I think, an easier race for everybody back there to run close to him in the second half of the race. We have not yet seen Bill Rogers. The pace is averaging 4 minutes and 51 seconds for the first 6 miles. That's a 2:08 marathon pace, actually closer to 2:07. The women's race, let me bring you up to date. At the
Ingrid Christensen is out in front,
right.
And they just went through Framingham, or they're headed to Framingham. Carla Berskens, as predicted, of Holland is second, and Lorraine Moeller of New Zealand right now is currently in third. And that should be a good battle between second and third if Ingrid Christensen's philosophy of going out hard holds up, if she can get through the hills.
The key to her race will be the last 5 to 6 miles. Can she set a new world women's record? Nobody has ever run the marathon in 2 hours and 20 minutes. We'll have to see exactly whether she's capable of it. We will not know until she is up into the Newton Hills and well through it before we can gauge her success. There you see the rest of the troops still feeling pretty fresh out there.
And that's where technology has not made its impact as yet.
The women right now are in the Framingham, actually past Framingham. We are 36 minutes into the race. That should bring them well through Framingham by about an extra half mile. There you see Ingrid Christensen in the blue wearing number 1. And it's not uncommon for the lead woman to be surrounded by a coterie of men.
And she's also wearing the yellow sneaker that you had pointed out, the yellow running shoe with the buckle on it. And I'm a little interested in her sock attire. It seems to me that she's not wearing a traditional white sock, or she's not wearing any type of sock with this shoe with its ventilation. The world record holder, Ingrid Christensen, in blue, surrounded by men. And that's a bit of controversy right there. Some people believe that some men deliberately run with her to draft for her, to block the wind, to help her get a record time. And this year, for money, that's a pretty serious charge.
You'll note that no one is directly in front of her. And I'd like to add that woman that you saw on the screen there, will tell you more about her as we progress. But talk about dedicated training. 100 to 150 miles a week she puts up for 2 straight hard weeks.
Live NHL hockey, divisional final, Montreal against Hartford, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So you get running, you get hockey, you get a lot of sports here on your Total Sports Network. And back to running, Ingrid Christensen.
She trains indoors in the winter in her hometown of Trondheim, Norway. Greta Weitz and that nation of 4 million people, they have two of the 4 best distance runners in the world, Greta Weitz and Ingrid Christensen. She trains alone. She spends up to 65% of her long workouts indoors on a treadmill. She has a young son now, 2.5 years of age, Gautha, and she also varies what they sometimes call cross-trains by spending as much as 4 workouts up to 2 hours a day outdoors running cross-country and skis.
We see that she has elected to run with gloves. Several runners have not. What is the preference there with the gloves? Is it just
I don't really know. It might just be circulation. I'm surprised at that. I noted that too right away. You did too. And as soon as I saw her, I said to myself, gee, this is not 40 degrees. And I don't know why. I am surprised. You'll notice we haven't seen anybody else out there with it.
If nothing else, it helps you wipe the sweat off your brow so it doesn't run in your eyes. We are going to take a time out. When we come back, we will continue with our live and continuous coverage of the 90th running of the Boston Marathon.
Right, that is incredible. You know, we'll try and give you the half splits because it's easy to figure out. There you're looking at Rob DiCostello, the upright posture, the easy arm action as he just seemingly floats along right there.
He is fluid.
Oh, he
so
is.
Fluid.
He is.
And he still is our front runner. Right now, let's go back to George Grand, who has some more information with our experts.
Thank you very much, Leandra. We remember back a year ago as we look at Rob DiCostello, as he is ahead of the pack by a short distance. We haven't seen the last of Jeff Smith, and on this day we haven't seen the last of Rob DiCostello either. What a difference in a year ago.
Well, you can see what Rob is doing right now. Is he's doing all the work out there. He's taking the lead, and in a marathon, that's not easy, particularly if there's a head breeze, and we have the feeling that there is. The others can do a bit of drafting, but Rob has decided to be the point man. He's taking the lead. He's pushing the pace. Of course, he's come incredibly prepared, mentally and physically.
Number 5, Greg Meyer. Is he starting to make a move? Is this a psychological point for him?
Well, I think Greg definitely wants to get back to the pack. It's too early for Greg to lose contact. That can be demoralizing. And, of course, Greg has a big advantage over the 3 men who are ahead of him. He knows the course. He has won this race.
Dr. Thompson, you just saw Deke turn around and look behind him, give a quick glance. What's the psychology at this point for the man who's leading?
I don't know what he was doing. He might have been talking to some of the fellows behind him to see if they would break the wind, if there is a headwind, or he may have been checking to see where the rest of the competition was. You don't want to lead alone like that all the way if you've got a bit of a headwind.
The sun has started to come out a bit over some of the course right now. If it warms up, what kind of an effect would that have?
If it warms up, it becomes much more difficult for the runners. You have to think of the runners as a machine just like your automobile. Your automobile gets rid of its heat by radiating heat through the radiator. The skin is the radiator for the runners. You got to get rid of that waste heat that you generate from exercise or you get overheated.
We've talked about it a couple of times and speculated, but all you have to do is look at Rob DiCostello's hair, and you can tell there is a pretty strong headwind. It's blowing in the breeze, so when we add this day up, talk about records, talk about the possibility of it, that has to take its toll in the last 6 miles of this race.
Oh, indeed it does. Indeed it does. Ito has been up there ever since the beginning. In fact, there was one little stage where Ito took the lead, the only time that DiCostello didn't hold it the entire race. He's one of Japan's top marathon runners. He's run 16 marathons. He's got 2 times below 2:10. However, Ito has never won a marathon.
Rob DiCostello trying to climb the mountain of the 1986 Boston Marathon. They're chasing him right now. The look at the picture in Copley Plaza. Someone else who tried to climb the mountain in downtown Boston. We'll be back after this.
Welcome back to the Boston Marathon. You are looking at Ingrid Christian, who is our leader, and she's a leader in a resounding fashion. 5:20 would keep her on the world record pace, and she's below that.
My, oh my, this is unbelievable. You are watching the history we spoke of as Christensen checks her watch, probably to realize that she is blowing the doors off this storied course here, going from Hopkinton to Boston. She is surging through these 8 communities at a pace that no other woman has come close to, including the legendary performance in 1983 of Joan Benoit when she set the world best. Her average time through the first 8 miles, get this, you joggers out there, 5 minutes and 12 seconds per mile.
Golly.
I mean, that's just so hard to believe. And she still has over 18 miles to go at that checkpoint when she went by 8 miles in 42 minutes, 3 seconds.
She's also slipped a little bit. Her last 3 miles were 5:10, 5:13, and 5:16. So she has gotten a little bit slower.
Well, the key to her is the second half of this race.
And she's also a minute 42 ahead of Carla Burskins, who's currently in second for the women. Let's go back to the men. Rob DiCostella has not lost everybody, but he's ahead of just 2 runners here, Kinimitsu Itu and Orrego. The 10-mile record, Jeff Smith last year, that was incredible. He was burning up the course through 10 miles.
Leandra, let me add something. This looks like it's headed to be Deeks Day all the way. They're starting to break E2. You don't want to lose 10 or 15 yards up there as E2 is beginning to lose. Joseph Kipsang, who is right off his shoulder from Kenya, is an Iowa State graduate who has run 2:13 for the marathon. Now we're back over to Ingrid as you see her pounding along. She had said that she would rather go out hard and then die to miss the record than feel later on that she should have given more in the first half of the race. And she is out there. Look at the arm action as one indication of how hard she is working on that race. There's the shoes and socks we talked about.
Ingrid Christensen. She's 5 feet 6 inches tall, and she weighs just 110 pounds. She's a mother of a 2-year-old boy and ran the year that she delivered and the year before. She's quite an athlete.
What a difference a year makes. 12 months ago, the field here for the 1985 Boston Marathon was something less than spectacular. But this time around, beginning with the women, it's a star-studded field. 12 months ago, Ingrid Christensen was racing in the London Marathon, where she set a new world record. This year, she's at Boston.
I want to try a new marathon. Not running in London this year because I ran twice before. And I hope to have very good competition because I hope that John Benoit should run. And then it was a good prize money. And I also want to try this famous old marathon. Because of this downhills in the beginning, I think I will try to run fast the halfway. It will be faster than I ran last year because of this downhills. But I will try to have a speed not so fast that I get stiff in my legs. I hope to run in the 2:20 because I know I'm in better shape this year than last year in London. And 1 minute, it's a lot of time, but I think if the weather condition will be like today, and I also heard a lot of the people looking at this marathon, they are helping you to run fast. So I feel this marathon will be the place to do the race in the 2:20.
Okay.
And the women's race is continuing. Ingrid Christensen is certainly burning up the course with her pace. As we said, she's a minute 42 ahead of Carla Burskins, so it's becoming a one-woman race. She has to really create her own energy, create her own excitement to stay on that pace.
The closer to Boston she comes, the easier it will become from the standpoint of being carried by the energy of the athletes. That 9.3 miles, you say, is, in the sport, it is 15 kilometers exactly. Look at that average pace. She is slowing down, as you say, but remember, 5 minutes and 23 seconds per mile is right what she averaged in her world record race of 2:21. Her goal today to be the first woman in history under 2 hours and 20 minutes. And we hope she does it in Boston.
On ESPN.
You bet.
Let's go back to George Grant.
Thank you, Leandra. Lisa Larson Weidenbach, of course, last year's winner, is not here this year. She has a stress fracture of her left foot. Joni Benoit, who we saw in the piece on Ingrid, had foot surgery. Dr. Thompson, she is not here. How is her injury progressing?
Well, my understanding is that she thinks she's about a month away from being back. My understanding also is that she had bone spurs removed. It's a fairly common injury among basketball players. They land on the heel a lot. Joni tends to land on the heel a little bit when she runs too, and that may be one of the reasons she developed these. Women seem to be prone to these stress fractures a little bit more than the men. Their bones are thinner. Joni's a ferocious trainer. She's out there putting in a lot of mileage, and that's the way to get injured.
George Hirsch, I saw Joni yesterday, and she was chafing at the bit. You could tell she really wished that she could be running today.
Yeah, particularly now. As you know, the sun started to come out. Now it's back under the clouds. This is a runner's dream day. Here's Ingrid at this point, obviously on the fast part of the course, running well below the world record. There's no telling how a fit Joni would have done against a fit Ingrid, but we do know they'd be there together at this point. I've got a feel for Joni.
Do you think she'll come back 100%?
Oh, 110%. You're talking Joan Benoit? 110.
We are waiting on the winners here in downtown Boston. We'll be back with more of ESPN's coverage of the 86 Marathon after this.
Back to our coverage of the Boston Marathon. Rob DiCostello still out in front after 11 miles, 53:34. That translates to 4:52 per mile. Translate that further into English. What does 4:52 mean?
4:52 is between 2 hours, 7 minutes and 2 hours and 8 minutes for the marathon. That is right on world record pace. Now, again, this is the easier part of the race. Joseph Kipsang hanging tough. This young man from Iowa State, as I have mentioned, is a 2:13 marathoner. Kenyans tend to be aggressive. The Tanzanians are too. They tend to go out hard in their races. We'll have to see what happens in the Newton Hills to him. He is truly in uncharted waters. He's never been close to this pace. While we have a second, Andres Vigier at 14 miles was in control of the wheelchair competition. He hit that at 52 minutes. Of course, that's a lot of downhill in there. Mike Hurd in the Masters competition for men over 40 passed the 10 miles, Leandra, in 51 minutes. That's a 5-minute and about 8-second per mile pace. The legendary Bill Rogers, we're happy to keep track of him for you, went by 10 miles in 50 minutes. That's a 2:11 marathon pace. And Rob DiCostello, as we mentioned, and Ingrid are just out there in control as we thought they might be. There's never been a performance so far like hers. Even Joan Benoit will be slightly slower. 10 miles Joan passed a few years ago in 51 minutes and 38 seconds. Unheard of at that time. That was the American record. She kept going for 16 more miles.
Let's talk a little bit about the masses that are now involved in the competition. We see in the back of the pack, those people are still running a nice, easy, comfortable race. But some of the people up front, the psychology for them is to beat somebody. When you line up with thousands of people, you pick somebody that you're going to beat. By gosh, by golly, they're not going to cross that finish line ahead of you. And although you may not beat the best, you beat the guy in the red shorts.
There's Vigier. 109.10 after 18 miles. Boy, he's really sprinting pretty quickly in his chair there, and he'll slow down here as he is in the Newton Hills, I might add, Vigier.
Back to Ingrid Christensen. We saw a nice profile on her, the young lady from Norway, mother of a 2-year-old son, and ran right through the pregnancy, never took a year off to have the baby, and then, of course, set the world record in London in 1985. Greta Weitz, in case you did not hear, ran in London just yesterday in the 1986 London Marathon. And, of course, she won that event. And she chose not to compete in Boston because the hills just lock up her legs.
Christensen started out, Leandra, as a cross-country skier at the age of 14 and slowly evolved into running, and then felt she actually enjoyed the cross-country skiing more, went back and did both for quite a while, and for 4 years was on the Norwegian national team as a cross-country skier to show you her great cardiovascular development.
Another athlete here who began in skiing and then turned to marathoning is wheelchair athlete Sharon Frenette from Salt Lake City, Utah. She, too, was a skier, although I believe she was a downhill racer, was involved in a lot of winter sports. Then she was injured about 5 years ago and turned to road racing. Her favorite events, of course, are the 10K and the half marathon. This is her third marathon in the wheelchair division. As we look at Ingrid Christensen, who's still burning up the field.
I might add what I find is interesting after talking to people like Joan Benoit, who was a skier herself. This is Rob DiCostello and Kipsang that you see. They're approaching the halfway point here of the race. They've been out on the course now for just over 1 hour. They are at this rate going to pass by the half marathon time in slightly under 1:04. So they're 3 minutes away, and they're right next to Wellesley College.
Kinomitsu Itu has dropped back. Now, we know a tactic that takes place in marathoning is the surge. And let's touch on that when we come back from this commercial message. Did the surge break Kinomitsu Itu? Did Castellas lose him? We'll be back with that thought in just a moment. We are back, and as promised, we were going to explain the surging tactic that possibly got rid of Kinomitsu Itu about a mile or so ago.
I'm watching Kip Sang's arm action. It's more pronounced than before. Watch his wrist. They're up by his chest. They were not as high before. I think he's losing ground right now. Look at Deke. He looked over his shoulder. He tried to pull back. Surging. What he's doing right now, Deke is beginning to drop with his withering pace all the competition. He may or may not have seen fit to step on the accelerator. Sometimes the pace is so strong these guys just naturally fall off. Earlier, I'm convinced Deke threw a surge in and opened up a lead that broke about half the field wide open. And you notice later on, Leandra, they contracted up, and the likes of Greg Meyer got up on his shoulder again as he kept trying to test their will. Look at, as we speak, the margin that he's opening up right now. I think he's, again, coming past Wellesley. De Castella, we'll see what happens in the Newton Hills, but he's obviously taught a lesson to the rest of the field in the first half.
That's the successful side of surging. The demoralizing side is if you do surge and they stay right with you there, you've spent all that gasoline and they're still with you and it didn't work. That can really steal your thunder, but it was effective for De Castella. He's lost the field. Ingrid Christensen is having a successful run at 11 miles. She's at 58.19.
Maybe our viewers noticed how subtle it was on our last shot just before we went to this aerial one of how De Castella just turned very casually and looked to his right just a bit, enough so that peripherally he could see exactly where Kip Sang was, and yet not turn around and look at him directly to give him confidence.
At 12, Ingrid Christensen, getting back to the women, is at 62.16. And George Grand, if I may bring you back into the telecast, I know you're very interested in Ingrid Christensen. She's quite an athlete.
That's right, Leandra. A couple of points here, too, as we look at Rob De Castella averaging just a shade over 450 a mile, 451 to be exact. We hear from our spotters all along this course, and you can tell if you're looking along the sidelines here, you see an umbrella now and then. There is some rain on part of the course, so that may very well be a telling factor when we get down to the final 6 miles as well. The wind also is a factor on this course. George Hirsch, we saw Ingrid Christensen, and we saw the convoy around her. Obviously, this is not something that just happened on the course. It was planned.
Well, this does. I think that the top runners among the women always seem to get a group of men around them. This really began with Greta. You know, it's like Greta's army. And now I think this happens. I think it's partly a feeling of let's protect this person. She's out here maybe going after a world record, and let's kind of get in there and take care of her. And that's what's happening.
The other question is how many of these men are going to be able to keep up with her for much longer at the pace she's going?
Well, the real question is how much can Ingrid keep this up? Because right now we're clearly seeing a world record or what could be a suicidal performance.
Dr. Thompson, her status right now in terms of the way she appears to be running.
She looks great from this point of view. She's moving right along. She has her hands up. Good arm action, a lot of drive. She looks wonderful.
We are Monday in Boston, the 90th running of the Boston Marathon. That's this week. Next week, ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the best in sports will continue. In fact, on Thursday, it'll continue as well on ESPN. Live coverage of PGA golf, the Houston Open. Jack Nicklaus will be there, the man who won the Masters and gave all of us a thrill this past week. We're getting thrills from Boston today. Thrills from Houston live on Thursday. And don't forget, next week, next Tuesday, live again, continuous coverage, our 7th year of the National Football League Collegiate Player Draft. So it's a busy spring, as always, on your source for sports. There you see the rear view of the masses here at the Boston Marathon. This is a race of the stars, but it's also a race of those people who just participate and enjoy every moment of this. George, we look at as they roll through Framingham and the numbers, as you can see, the second place person behind Ingrid Christensen. The race for second is the only race I think we're going to see among the women at this stage.
Right, and the second place runner at this point is Carla Berskens of the Netherlands, and we're not at all surprised by this. She has run a 2:27.50, so she came in here with outstanding credentials. She got a 4th in Chicago in the great Benoit Christensen race, so we're not at all surprised by her being up there.
It's Patriots Day in Massachusetts, the 90th running of the Boston Marathon. ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the marathon will continue after this timeout.
You are seeing some of the runners at the 90th running of the Boston Marathon. These are people who are in the back of the pack. Some of them have qualified. There are some, as we call them, bandits without numbers. In case you've ever entertained the thought of getting out of your living room chair and running a marathon without any previous training whatsoever, I am now going to defer to Dr. Thompson. What kind of effect does it have on your body, Dr. Thompson, if you've never worked out before, to go out and try to do 26 miles?
Well, if you go out and try to do 26 miles and you haven't done it before, you're going to discover some muscles that you didn't know existed. The whole thing behind this is using common sense and starting slowly. If you're healthy, if you have no medical problems, you can start out with a vigorous walking program for a couple of weeks. What I tell people to do is walk a telephone pole, jog 4. Jog 1, telephone pole, walk 4, for example, until they get back in shape. If you've got any questions about your health, though, you should check in with your own doctor before you go out there and try to participate in an event like this. Common sense is the key.
All right, Dr. Thompson, I guess that means that some of these people who might try to complete a marathon will hit a wall at the first mile. This is Wellesley College, where the entire student body steps out to cheer the runners on as we, again, look at the back of the pack.
You're looking right there at the athletes coming through the 10.4 mile mark in native. We just saw Wellesley, which is at 13 miles. Just as Leandra said, these are the people, despite having numbers here, who are in the least top shape. I mentioned some qualifying standards to get in here. Briefly, let me say that it takes a performance for a man under 40 of 2 hours and 15 minutes for the marathon. That's like a 5-minute and 40-second pace to come to Boston to qualify. He must run that within essentially the previous year of this race to be invited as a competitor. There are staggered gradations for each 10-year increment of age that you can run a slower pace and still come to Boston.
And we should add, it must be in a sanctioned Boston Marathon meet.
Or a certified race, correct. Now, for women under 40 years of age, they must run 3 hours and 20 minutes or faster to get an invitation. And then again, there's 10-minute increments slower that are allowed for each additional 10 years of age.
The masters, the veterans, etc.
That's correct. So again, our tributes to these people, but don't go out there and try it unless you're in shape. Wheelchairs, 18 miles. Andre Vigier, George Murray in second. So the race continues among the two giants of the sport.
All right, let's go back to George Grand. And George, Bill Rogers, as we understand it, is in 15th place. A happy day for Boston Billy.
That's right. They call him Mr. Boston, and very clearly at the number 15 position, he's still within striking distance, although not at the rate that Rob DiCostello is going at this point. He's a 4-time winner of the Boston Marathon, and as Dr. Thompson mentioned, you have to know the course in Boston. You don't just run it, you have to psychologically attack it, and Bill Rogers knows Boston.
You have to be used to the hills to run Boston well. And many top runners like Bibe Bikila and Greta Weitz have dropped out at Boston. Right now I'm running about 100 miles a week, sometimes less, sometimes more, trying to do my racing, put all the parts of the training puzzle together so that on race day, I can have a good race. Usually at Boston, because of the downhill, there is a number of people that go out too fast. And I'm sure that will happen again. And all marathons are being run so fast these days, I don't think I'll be up with some of the leaders, but I hope to be fit enough to stay with the top 10 or so. And if I can place in the top 10 at the finish line, I'll be relatively happy. I'd like to break 2 hours and 12 minutes for my time, and that's a world-class time. If you can break 2:12 for a guy, or maybe 2:35 for a woman, something like that. The important things about the Boston Marathon course is that there's a drop in elevation from the start on this hill in the town of Hopkinton. A very steep drop in the first mile. You want to be careful not to run that first mile too fast, because about 17 miles down the road in Newton, there's 3 or 4 hills, and you're going to have to climb back up. And so you've got to save energy for the hills. Yet, at the same time, you've got to run the kind of pace that allows you to run them hard. and realized that the last 5 or 6 miles of the Boston course are very easy. It's flat or downhill. So you put everything into the race by about 21 miles, and then you just hold on. But at Boston, usually the winner is the winner by 21 miles, not 26 miles. Tradition is almost everything at Boston, you know, and it always has been. And and to my mind, not only a more recent thing has been the runners who qualify for the race, and they're very important. But what has made the Boston Marathon has been the top runners from all over the world always wanting to run Boston. And they knew that their predecessors, whether it was Clarence DeMar or Johnny Kelly or Bibe Bakila or Greta Weitz, and nowadays Joan Benoit or Alberto Salazar, they knew these people had run here. It was just like in another sport, you could walk along the same path that the top people in that sport had been at. You could compete on the same course, you know, and measure yourself against them. And that's why
he has to attack.
I think the mental side of it is almost more important than the physical side, the training side, because the training side is something that, you know, just about anybody can do if they've, you know, got a little bit of talent and strength and whatever. The mental side of a marathon especially is very demanding, and I find that mentally it takes me almost mentally longer to recover from a marathon than it does physically. They really do knock you around because, you know, it's a sort of race that you have to concentrate, especially over that last half when you're physically tired. You have to concentrate very intensively to keep the pressure on and keep yourself running fast. And it's tough to concentrate at that level for an hour or in excess of 2 hours. So it really leaves you pretty drained at the finish.
Welcome back to the 1986 Boston Marathon. Rod DiCastello still out in front, but a story is developing very close behind.
Arturo Barrios has taken second. He's 30 seconds behind DiCastello. Joseph Kipsang fallen off the pace. Greg Meyer is fourth. Kunamitsu Itu is fifth. Ingrid Christensen at 14 miles has 4 minutes and 14 seconds on the rest of the field. Second place, Lorraine Mola. Third, Finland's Sinala Kistakalo.
In the men's wheelchair division, Andres Viget of Canada is out in front comfortably. You do not see George Murray anywhere in your picture, so he has a healthy lead and doesn't need to look back. At this point in time, when I talk to him, he's got to be concerned as you see him adjusting the direction on his front wheels. He's concerned about his armpits rubbing. A casual movement will cause an instant burn to his underarm area. Right by his bicep. There are rims to protect against that, but sometimes you just get a little sloppy because of fatigue at this point in time. There are 4.5 minutes, I am told, between Viget and Murray. So Andres Viget just has to stay healthy, I would say, through the rest of this race, and he's got himself $2,500, which is the first place award in the wheelchair division.
To update everybody quickly, Christensen is still maintaining slightly better than a 5-minute and 20-second mile pace. Now, I expect that to fall off a little bit, Leandra, as she passes 16 miles and begins up the first of the 4 Newton Hills.
Let's go back now to George Grand and Dr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Leandra. When we talk of this aspect of the race, we are getting to the point where the old phrase, hitting the wall, starts to come into play, and it's something that in any marathon is a factor.
It's always a factor in a marathon. Hitting the wall doesn't happen to some of the best runners, the people that can monitor themselves and they can not run out of their energy supplies. But hitting the wall for the rest of us is running out of glycogen in the muscle, not having enough energy to carry on.
When we look at the physical aspect of hitting the wall, is it something that you can prepare yourself for so you don't hit it, or is it something you have to go through like a baseball player in spring training? You got to get a sore arm at least once to go through it.
Well, you don't want to hit the wall. When you hit the wall, you really can't go on. You're out of energy. No matter how strong the will is, you just can't finish the race. It is something you can prepare yourself for, both by training and by eating the right foods beforehand.
It's not just hitting the wall as one aspect of it, like Jeff Smith, for instance, last year. He didn't hit the wall, but he had other breakdowns in his body.
Yeah, that's part of it, though. You know, when you start getting cramped like that, the muscle doesn't react well because it doesn't have the energy to react well. You've got to have energy for contraction. It's an interesting thing. You know, you've got plenty of sugar in the blood, you've got free fatty acids in the blood, but if you don't have that energy in the muscle tissue itself, you can't seem to push through.
Let me ask.
Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
At the 18-mile mark, Rob Di Castella of Australia continues to set the men's pace at a 1:27.50. That is 4 minutes and 52 seconds per mile. We have already seen one record here today, George Hurst, and we may be heading towards the possibility of another one, although that is becoming less likely at this stage.
A little bit less likely. Rob is holding an excellent pace and could run about a 2:08, which if he could hold up, the hills are still ahead. He could break Alberto Salazar's course record. Barrios, whom we talked about earlier as the dark horse, is 45 seconds behind Di Castella, and he could still make this interesting.
Dr. Thompson, the philosophy here for Di Castella.
The philosophy is just to keep this up if you possibly can.
All right, Rob Di Castella, he's in the driver's seat. Thank you very much, Alan. What a memorable day for that man from Canada. We remember 2 years ago when he was champion, and here is a man who hopes to be champion before this afternoon is over as well. Those wheelchair performers are athletes, superlative athletes. You can just cross out the word wheelchair from in front of that. What tremendous competitors. You can see the overcast nature of the course. It has stayed that way. There has been some intermittent rain. If you're just joining us, this is ESPN's live and continuing coverage of the 1986 Boston Marathon, the 90th running of this marathon. It is the oldest continuous marathon, yearly marathon in the world. We'll be back to update you on Ingrid Christensen and Rob Di Castella, the two leaders in the marathon of '86, after we pause for this timeout.
He is past the 17-mile mark. There you see some of the wheelchair people coming in.
And the
Two of them together.
The first women's wheelchair competitor is not expected for another 8 minutes or so. As we see, remember, there's just a field of four. I believe this is Junior Rice coming in here. And there's a battle. And they're going to come in holding hands. Third and fourth in the men's wheelchair division. George Murray finished second. And, of course, Andre Vigier finished first.
There you go, Ingrid, trying no doubt to relax. Look at her drop her arms, just as I said that. She is trying to just get comfortable in the whole thing and recover. She has a 5-minute lead on Carla Berskins. There you see Keskitalo of Finland, who was 15th in the Olympic marathon, is in third place. I'm telling you, this battle's not over, but maybe her attempt for a world record, a world best, has gone by the wayside. We will try and get you what her splits break down to at 17 miles.
If she does lock up, then this race is very much a factor for Carla Berskins. And judging by the grimace, if that's a gauge, she could lock up.
Leander, it might have been last year Jeff Smith. This year, it might be this woman. Although I think she's more fit than Jeff was last year in this race. And I think she has gone out hard before and recovered. It obviously slowed down here. Look at this leg action. She has slowed dramatically.
And she's also lost her entourage. She only has a trailer and one fellow that she's about to overtake. So no one's breaking the headwinds for her if she is, in fact, encountering headwinds. 17 miles. Her time was 1:31:20.
Okay, she has lost time. These Newton Hills are tough now. The 17 miles means she's gone up and over one of the more difficult hills. She's at 5 minutes and 22 seconds per mile. So her last 4 or 5 miles have been at around a 5-minute 20 to 5-minute 30 seconds per mile. And she is beginning to lose it here, still with 8 or 9 miles left to go.
I'm also beginning to see an unevenness in her gait. She's not as smooth as she was certainly further back.
She right this second, as we look at her, is not going at a 5:25 or 5:30 per mile pace. Now again, there's some hills involved here, but I think that she is in for a painful last 5 miles or possibly 7 or 8 miles of this race. Stay tuned. Let's see if she can gather herself together here. She has a huge lead on the rest of the field. In the men's race, right now they're up at 19 miles, and it is still Rob Di Castella, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 10 seconds for you. And Arturo Barrios is right now 47 seconds behind. The shrewd 23-year-old Texas A&M graduate running a smart race, laying off the early pace. Let's see what he's got left. Orlando Pizzolato, who loves to run from behind. He did it twice in New York, has moved up to 5th place. Joseph Kipsang holding on for 4th. He is about 2 minutes behind Di Castella. And Canada's top Olympian, Art Bolio, is right now in 3rd place, a minute and a half behind Di Castella. So it's Deke, Barrios, Boilo, Kipsang, Pizzolato.
And in 7th place, it's Boston Billy. Bill Rogers currently in 7th place. Remember, he has won this event 4 times already. Let's go back now. What?
I was going to say, who says Wile E. Coyotes in cartoons only?
Okay, let's go to one of our Wile E. Coyotes, George Grand.
Thank you very much, Leandra. We talk about this marathon day, and we've been talking a lot about the athletes who are up at the top, those that are approaching Heartbreak Hill, those that have passed Heartbreak Hill. But this day is so much more than that. There are quality athletes here because you have to qualify, and there are those that have just jumped in on the course along the way. It's really a celebration. It's a tremendous moment. It's a celebration of athleticism, George Hirsch.
Oh, yeah. Boston is the World Series, the heavyweight championship. It's everything. It involves the entire city and all the communities along the way. It's a great, great day.
Let me ask you one question about the money aspect. They are giving prize money for the first time this year. There's been a long debate. Is it good? Is it bad? How do you evaluate it?
Well, I think the spirit here over the last few days and today tells us something. These athletes are professionals. I think the vast majority of people feel very, very good that they should be paid for their work. And it's a lot of work. Rob DiCostella, to prepare for a race like this, just puts in, you know, countless hours every single day, and I think they deserve it.
Should keep in mind, too, that the athletes don't walk out with this money in their pocket. For those that want to remain amateurs, they put it in a trust fund that is managed for them, and they can draw from that trust fund for what is called legitimate training expenses, things of that nature. Sometimes, Dr. Thompson, those legitimate moments and those legitimate dollars can be stretched a little bit one way or another. Do you think the dollar figure and the act of it is a good prospect for this marathon?
Well, I think it's good in terms of the quality of the field at Boston, but for the back-of-the-pack runners, you know, they don't really care that much. Boston is Boston. It's a pilgrimage. It's a rite of spring. I don't think the back-of-the-pack runners care that much. It's just for the front runners, really. Brings the quality
Heartbreak
up.
Hill, Rob DiCostella, the peak of it, as we look at the athletes hitting Heartbreak Hill. George Hirsch?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that's Barrios in second, and it is Barrios in second. And speaking of money, George, 6 weeks ago, Barrios went to Phoenix for a big race. No one paid his way. He slept in a hotel room with 3 friends, went on to beat the class field, and since then, the running world has been buzzing with the name Barrios. So here he is. He's in second at Heartbreak Hill, and I still think we've got a race on.
Let's go to race coverage with Leandra and Larry.
And there is quite a bit of difference between first and second place. Can Barrios catch him? It's Heartbreak Hill.
Okay, time to have some fun, everybody. If you're watching out in Las Vegas, take your bets. I think this man has a chance to run possibly the 3rd fastest time of all time, and he's got a real shot at the world record. He looks light to me. He's up on his toes. He got through the Newton Hills. He went by 20 miles at the fastest pace ever run. Right now, he went by in 1 hour, 37 minutes, and 8 seconds. Greg Myers' time had been an all-time best, 1:37.11. I think he's got something left. He looks good. Let's see what he can terrorize the last 5 miles downhill in. Coming up over Heartbreak Hill, you see, and there you see some of the women wheelchair athletes moving along.
I believe that's Angela Laripi of Canada, the first woman in the wheelchair competition, as we look at one of the runners.
That is Art Bolio from Canada right now, who has been in 3rd place, and he's a minute and a half behind Deke, and obviously trying to recover a little bit from his effort after the Newton Hills. Here comes Deke coming downhill just outside Boston College. Very steep downhill part. I'm telling you, he looks good. This is going to be a great finish. I think he's got something left over this course. He looks smooth. He looks comfortable. He took some fluid after he got through the Newton Hills. Let's go, Rob DiCostella.
And he's taking everything he can from the crowd, everything he possibly can. We will be back with our continuing coverage of the Boston Marathon, but first, these messages. Rob DiCostella way out in front, looking extremely healthy. And he has certainly put the hammer down for the rest of the field, unless Arturo Barrios can muster something up that we don't know about.
He's had good speed. He's at 4:52. That is a rep between 2:07 and 2:08 for the marathon distance. DiCostella still running strongly. You can tell where he's landing on his feet. It's more towards the ball of his foot. Look how graceful he is at that excellent speed. Look at him. He just raised the fist, I think, as if this, I don't know, was he asking the truck something or what? Maybe to get out of the way.
Yes. Oh, he's running faster than the truck.
Greg Meyer, number 3, coming over Heartbreak Hill, looking like he's struggling pretty badly. Down the long stretch of Beacon Street.
Rob DiCostello, 29 years of age. He's 5'11", weighs 143 pounds. And seems very, very confident. I don't see him, like Ingrid Christensen, staring at his watch as much. He doesn't seem to be as time conscious about his performance.
Leandra, many of the athletes will watch the mile markers or the times, and they will make sense of what they hear along the way. Interesting graphic here. Look at the breakdown that he is, how evenly he has run. And it's to his favor that he is not dying right now based on his performance. Look at those splits. Left-hand side is what he has averaged for each 5-mile split. And he reached 20 miles and got through the 3 of the 4 hills in 1:37.08. And it is a flat to gentle downhill run with virtually no exceptions after Heartbreak Hill for the last 5 miles of the race. Notice him cutting corners here. He's going to run, I think, under 2:08. And considering the fact I think the temperature is probably 55 to 60, maybe closer to 60 degrees right now in Boston, that's not ideal. It's a little warm, and he has just run exceedingly well so far.
And there you can see the clock that's on the car in front of him. That's why he doesn't have to look at his watch. He's got a giant clock in front of him. Carbohydrate loading. It's not just a ritual. It's a physiological necessity, Dr. Thompson explains. Mr. Barrios is in second. And there you saw the rest of the field, third, fourth, and fifth.
His first marathon performance was a 2:14. His coach said just go out and run it and try and relax. He felt terrific at that pace through the half marathon of that first effort and decided to pick things up and ran fast enough to qualify for a national team running 2:14, and he's really adopted that event ever since he realized how gifted he was. All 5 feet 9.5 inches, 146 pounds coming into this race. The last report on Ingrid Christensen we had was she was 1 hour 37 minutes and 11 seconds at the 18-mile mark. Carla Berskens was in second, and Ingrid had several minutes on her at that point. But the lead was shrinking dramatically as Ingrid began to suffer greatly in the Newton Hills.
In the women's wheelchair division, Candice Cable-Brooks is our leader. They are at, or past rather, the 23-mile marker, and Angela Lariti is second. There were only 4 women completing the women's wheelchair competition, as we understand it right now. Candice Cable-Brooks looks like she's going to successfully defend her 1985 title with another victory here at Boston. Rob DiCostello, still our leader, will continue with his story. But right now, we're going to take a time out for these important messages. Heartbreak Hill in 1986, and it is taking its toll.
Heartbreak Hill so far has won, as have the Newton Hills. She had a lead on Carla Berskens of over 3.5 minutes going past the 16-mile mark. By the 18-mile mark, the lead had shrunk down to less than 1.5 minutes. A tremendous gain on the part of Berskens, who I should have added earlier on, once I saw her in second, is noted as a very smart runner. She tends to run even marathon pace. The last 2 efforts were almost exactly even pace, when she ran 2:27. Now you're seeing here, at 20 miles, Ingrid still has the lead, but it has been disintegrating in front of her very eyes. As we just have had, I believe Candice Cable-Brooks crossed the finish line. Unofficially, her time was 2 hours, 9 minutes for the distance. There's Deke, still running comfortably.
Candice's time is a little off her record of 2:05 as we take a look at Rob DiCostello. After 23 miles, 1:52.01. So we project his finish, and this is based on your calculations, Larry, 2:07.40?
2:07.40, I'll stick with. It depends on how much he has left. Again, I'm gauging how well he looks. He's still running sprightly. The women's race continues to be an exciting story as Ingrid now has a lead at 20 miles over Carla Berskens of just 12 seconds. She has got Heartbreak Hill still to go. She reached 20 miles in 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 50 seconds. Berskens is beginning to eat her alive.
Different story here. DiCostello has about a 2-minute lead over Arturo Barrios. If his 2:07.40 holds up, as you mentioned, it will be the 3rd all-time men's performance. Carlos Lopez and Steve Jones being 1 and 2 is 2:07.12 and 2:07.13, so 2:07.40 would fit right in there.
Here you see the athletes as they are coming through we have, to give you an idea here, we have less than 12 minutes left in this race. It'll be somewhere around that time. There we are approaching Kenmore Square. The athletes here will be greeted for the last 14 miles by spectators anywhere from 3 deep on both sides of the road to as great as 10 deep for 14 miles, Leandra.
And they can't even see or hear all of the people that are watching the giant screen television at Copley Square. And even though the crowd cannot actually see the race, we occasionally hear this swelling of applause coming from Copley Square as they hear about time, splits, and performances. Rob DiCostello and Ingrid Christensen, the stories here. DiCostello looks quite comfortably to be the men's winner, but there's a different drama developing on the women's side. Carla Berskens and Ingrid Christensen are going to be racing to the finish.
To give you an idea of how good the women are out here, Carla Berskens and Ingrid Christensen, I'd like to add this. In the United States, most of the girls' high school mile championships across the United States are won in a time between 4 minutes and 55 seconds and 5 minutes and 10 seconds. Ingrid's been averaging 5 minutes and 20 seconds for 26 straight miles so far in this race.
At 21 miles, Ingrid Christensen, 153.40. Carla Berskens, 154.57. We'll be back.
For those of you just joining us, this is ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1986 Boston Marathon, the 90th edition of this historic race. There you see Ingrid Christensen's split time so far. George Hirsch, how does it add up?
Well, it adds up that Rob DiCostello took the measure of the hills, but it might have been slightly the other way, and the hills might have taken a lot out of Ingrid Christensen. Here she is. She looks a tad better to me than she did when she was going uphill. Seems to me that she's picked up some rhythm here, and she's holding off Carla Berskens, who's been closing over the last miles.
Dr. Thompson, explain what happened to her after she got through those hills.
I'm not exactly sure why she picked up or why she looks like she's picked up. That may be deceptive to us on the camera. Sometimes when you back off a little bit, you get a better feeling. You get that kind of second wind. Frank Shorter says it doesn't exist, that's really someone slowing down, so she might have gotten a second wind from slowing down. I can't stress enough how important it is to run even splits in a race like that. Physiologically, it makes the most sense. And at Boston, if you're running even splits, because it's so fast early on, you're really running very easy early in the race.
This is no longer a 26-mile race. It is now a much shorter race. George Hirsch, how do we evaluate these two athletes now so close together?
Well, Ingrid, you can see, and my sense is you can see her there. She's waving to the motorcycles to move out ahead of her, to give her a clear run. She's shouting because the crowds are tight around her. I have the feeling that Ingrid is picking it up a little bit, and I think she's probably doing this on her extraordinary experience as the world record-holding marathon runner.
And behind her?
Behind her, a pack of hungry women closing in on $25,000 plus a Mercedes.
Does Berskens have a shot at it?
Oh, I think she does, yeah. If Ingrid looks like this and can maintain it, then she can probably hold off any other women, but you don't know.
It is raining lightly at Kenmore Square. It has been raining intermittently throughout the course of this race. The wind has been gusting up to 40 miles per hour at times. Let's go back to race coverage of this 1986 Boston Marathon with Leandra and Larry.
Larry Rawson, I want to put you on the spot. Your projection, what's going to happen to Ingrid Christensen and Carla Berskens?
I think the winner's time here, and she has begun to put a little distance. Ingrid has more than she had before, not by much, between herself and Carla. Carla appears to be more than about a minute behind here now as they are closing in on about the 22-mile mark. I might add this, that Rob DiCostello ran his 24th mile in 4 minutes, 47 seconds. Hold on to your sneakers, folks. Again, still on not an ideal day. He is running well. Ingrid, to get back to her, she is running now at about 5 minutes and 40, 45, maybe even 5:50 per mile pace when we get to see the results later on. She is slowing down. I would project the woman's winning time, it might not be her, to be around 2 hours, 23 minutes, somewhere in that range here. And it might be a tad even slower. She, I think, went out and burned herself in the first half of the race a little too hard.
A sub-2:26 performance by the leading woman would net her not only the $30,000 first prize, but would also net her a performance bonus of a total of $5,000. So it'd be worth $35,000 for her to be under 2:26 and a Mercedes-Benz.
Lee, if I'm wrong, and she can get under 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 42 seconds, which is Joan Benoit's old world record, or world best here, set in 1983, she picks up an additional $25,000 in cash.
And then there's the course record, and of course there's more money for the world record. And if the course record is in jeopardy, which right now it does not appear to be, as you said, $25,000, a bonus. Rob DiCostello with an entourage of Boston's finest.
Here's the lead. First place right now is DiCostello. Second is Art Bolio. He is about 3 minutes behind Deke. Third is Arturo Barrios, and he is right off the shoulder of Bolio. And Orlando Pizzolato, running as he traditionally does, like Sophie Sullivan, the old horse, from behind with a great kick, is now in 4th place. Bill Rogers, last we heard, was 7th. Greg Meyer was 5th. Deke looks great, I'm telling you. That leg turnover for this point in the marathon is terrific. He's got rhythm. They're like pistons. Look at his arm action, just as he was running at the 4-mile mark. The guy is amazing. This is his day here. This young man from Canberra, Australia, the first Australian, if he keeps this up, to ever win the Boston Marathon in 90 years of its history. The best previous performance, Davy Chettle, finishing among the top 15, and he wasn't even close to the winner's stand in the Laurel Wreath.
Rob DiCostello getting an enthusiastic reception from the policemen, from the crowds. He's an excited man. He knows what he's accomplishing today.
As they say in track and field for DiCostello, 1 to go. He's got less than 1 mile to go. There is Ingrid. There's her time for 22 miles, and she's got 4 1/4 miles left. At that particular pace, she's right now 2:24 as she continues to slow.
So now her goal has become to beat the 2:26 bonus time. Obviously, the world record is beyond her reach. She is aware of that, but I'm sure she's aware of the financial situation if she can stay under 2:26.
You know what's interesting, Leandra? They talk about Boston being a relatively easy course because it's downhill. And sometimes the hills, people talk about it being an easy course. For her, it's destroyed her in some ways from what she's done on flatter courses. Deke has come right through it, maybe because of his hill training, and men with powerful legs tend to do better. Sego did, and now this man, DiCostello.
Back to the women. Ingrid Christensen, who at one time had slipped to within 30 seconds of Carla Berskens, is now 1.5 minutes ahead of her closest rival. So Ingrid Christensen looks like she has enough distance between her and second place that she can hold on to win this Boston Marathon. I said earlier in the opening of this telecast that the women have run unofficially for 21 years. Women were banned from competition. Roberta Gibb was the first runner in 1966, and of course Catherine Switzer in 67. It was 16 years ago that women were officially entered in the Boston Marathon, accepted as competitors. So this is the 16th anniversary for women in this sport, and in such a short time, they have certainly accomplished a lot.
Oh, have they ever. Dale Krieg was the first woman to get under 3 hours and 30 minutes. That was back in 1964. The women have lopped over 1 hour off marathon pace and are now only 11% behind the men. What is ideal? You go to the 100 meters. Women have been running that in competition for years, as have the men. The women are within 8% of the fastest men's times ever run. And right now, that would equate out to a 2:17:30 marathon. The women at that...
.205, 27, 28, 29, 30. So 205.30 we are at, and you project a 207.40 finish.
I think he's going to be faster. Now, 2:07:11 is the fastest ever. Here comes Deke. And I'm telling you, folks, watch closely. This may be at, as I said, or maybe under the world's fastest marathon ever run in history.
2:07 is what we are looking at. The men's world's best record is what he wants to certainly beat. 2:07:12 of Carlos Lopez. That is worth a lot of money. $50,000 to break a world record, $25,000 to break a course record. And then, of course, there's all the honors and prestige and contracts that go hand in hand with it. 2:06:04, Rob DiCostello turning it on as he heads down towards the finish line. And the crowd here on Boylston Street is coming to their feet. They are roaring. Ahead of DiCostello, we have another wheelchair finisher. They will encourage him across the finish line. And then DiCostello will coast home with about a minute left to his race.
There is just over a quarter mile left to go. About a quarter. Deke again with more pronounced arm action than you've seen. The arms are coming up higher. He has some speed left. The young man who married a woman named Daleen Cruz, who was herself a top Australian track and field star.
And a triathlete.
You're right. Look at the movement. This man came and just made this course look like butter.
The clock is telling the story. The all-time men's performance, 2:07:12 by Carlos Lopez. That's Rotterdam in 1985. That is the record he is trying to beat.
Only 2 men in history have ever been under 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 5 seconds. That's Steve Jones, an Olympic gold medalist, Carlos Lopez from Portugal. He can see the finish line. He knows how far he's got to go. He knows the prize money. He's already locked up an additional $25,000 by beating Alberto Salazar's course record. The crowd is standing on its feet. Everybody is cheering. Everybody. I've seen policemen cheering.
Let's listen to the roar as they bring him in.
Fastest time ever run in the history of the sport. It's only been done by 2 people and done once only. That's his personal best.
Rob DiCostello, winner of the 90th Boston Marathon, winning here today, 1986, with the 3rd fastest time in men's marathon history.
What a tremendous reception he got. Look at him. All right, take a deep breath, Ron.
He looks good.
Celebrate already. He was clear-eyed, as I said, during his running early. He was confident. I was really struck with his attitude, his performance. Look at this. Governor Michael Dukakis of the state of Massachusetts crowning the winner with a laurel wreath.
He'll have an easy ride home in a Mercedes-Benz. Tell me that's not incentive. The wreath is nice, the prestige is nice, but money, a new car, it means a lot to these athletes who work so hard, so long.
Well, they're having a little laugh right now because the medal's too small to find around his head.
Well, if he has a big head, he should.
Unofficially, 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 50 seconds for the Deke. The most feared marathoner in the world. You're looking at him there. Consistency has been his hallmark 3 times under 3 hours and 2 hours and 9 minutes in the past.
Rob DiCostello being congratulated. A fine performance, Rob. He made the 90th running of the Boston Marathon memorable. We will continue with our coverage of the Boston Marathon. Still to finish the women's division and second place for the men. Don't go away.
Two parts of the puzzle have already come to fruition here. The wheelchair winner, Andres Vigier of Canada, the men's winner, Rob DiCostello of Australia, and the second place finisher will also be from north of the border in Canada, George Hirsch.
Yeah, Art Beaulieu ran from way back and just kept reeling him in one at a time to get second place. He passed Barrios, he passed Pete Salato and Bill Rogers and the rest of them. But it was Deke's day.
This is a day that belongs to Deke, and Dr. Thompson, I know we're in a situation where he's got a big smile on his face right now.
He's got a big smile on his face. Just how hard he had to work depends on what the wind was out on the course. It's hard for us to judge back here.
Here's Orlando Pizzolato, the 2-time New York Marathon winner, saying, hey, I gave it my best shot, George.
And he came from way back. He keeps doing it. I had the feeling that little shrug said, maybe I waited till a little too late today, because he looked awfully fresh coming down the home stretch.
This is a day that belongs to Deke, Rob DiCostello, a man who yesterday, when I was talking with him in the hotel lobby, said, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to run possibly the best race of my life. And while it was not a world record, it certainly was his personal best.
It was perfect in execution. He came beautifully prepared in every aspect of it. Hill training, speed training. He had done very well in the World Cross Country Championships. He knew he was ready. And unlike the Olympics, when Deke went in as the favorite, he was overtrained. Here he came relaxed and confident.
Alan Massengale is standing by with the man of the hour, Deke, Rob DiCostello of Australia.
Certainly the man of the hour, Rob DiCostello. The 90th Boston Marathon is yours. Your reaction?
I'm pleased it's over. It was a pretty tough way to do it, you know, sort of leading right from the start. And I found the last few miles pretty hard out there by myself and not really knowing what was happening behind me. So I was pleased to cross the finish line.
Did you plan on jumping out like that? That surprised a lot of people. You were the favorite coming in.
Not really. I planned to just settle down in the first part. But the first part is so fast because the first 6 miles is downhill. And I felt that I was running pretty comfortably, so I thought I'd just keep it going.
How about the weather and the wind? You had a headwind for a while at the start. The temperatures, did that help?
I noticed the headwind for a little bit, but I don't think it was a big problem. I think by and large the conditions were pretty good.
Let's talk about the prize money for the first year. You picked up $60,000 total, I believe, at the last estimate. How does that make you feel?
Well, you know, it's not the reason that I run, but it's certainly nice. It'll pay a few bills.
Okay, Rob DiCostello, the winner of the 90th Boston Marathon. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Fine job. And as you saw while Rob was talking, Mr. Boston came down for 4th place, Bill Rogers. And very clearly, George, it's Bill Rogers who was on the rebound and beginning to run.
It's another great story. 2:13 and a 4th place for Boston Billy. I love it.
Let's go back to race coverage with Leandra and Larry.
Boston Billy brought them to their feet. As you see, Arturo Barrios crossing the finish line just now. As we go back to our coverage of the women, Ingrid Christensen. After 24 miles, 2:11:55 is her time at that mark.
Leandra, she is right on about 2:24 pace now, and it continues to slide just a bit. Now, she's probably got a shot to get under 2:24, but I think it'll be in the 2:24s. Barrios learned the lesson, I guess. Many people felt he would push Deke, but he was 2:14:12 for his time. Billy Rogers unofficially 2:13:35. But number 4, Bill Rogers. This is a man who lives in Hopkinton, a 2:11 marathoner. We'll get to him in a minute. That is Ingrid Christensen still laboring along. Watch the length of her stride there. Notice how small it is. Her leg stride is shorter than it has been. The arm action accentuated. Notice how the whole body is lumbering from left to right. She's using her upper body extensively to try and help carry her legs.
Mentally, when you are at this point, when we can see that she does not have a smooth stride, does she try to smooth it out? Does she try to conscientiously say, now come on, level this out?
The pain is great in the legs. That's Domingo Chividueza crossing the line that you see right now from Colombia, who's a coach at the University of Reno in Nevada. You are looking at Ingrid to touch on her point there. There she is again. She is thinking of everything inspirational she can to get to the finish line. Her coach, her husband Arv, who's there. She's trying to lift her legs, but the pain in the legs and the lack of glycogen that Dr. Thompson's been referring to is making it extremely difficult to take your normal stride and to move. She is a very depleted runner right now, and she's got about 1.5 miles left to go.
We are now going to break away. Ingrid Christensen will be coming home shortly. When we come back, we will continue with the rest of the finishers on the men and the first winner for the women. As George Grand likes to refer to it, the parts of the puzzle are starting to fall into place. Rob DiCostello has won the men's Boston Marathon for 1986. His unofficial time, 2:07:50. In the men's wheelchair division, it's Andres Vigier. For the women in the wheelchair division, Candice Cable-Brooks. And for the women runners, it's not over. Ingrid Christensen is our leader. You are looking at her now. Carla Gerstens is in second place, approximately 3 minutes behind Ingrid Christensen. And in third from Canada, Lizanne Bessières.
Leandra, she is just about 300 yards away from Red Sox home at Fenway Park as she comes through Kenmore Square with just a little over a mile to go in the race. She still kept on, interestingly enough, her white gloves through the whole race here, and it is not that cold out. The phalanx of police, which have been with the lead woman all the way, seem to get thicker as you get close to the finish line.
As she evaluates Boston 1986. Of course, she was looking for a confrontation with Joan Benoit, who did not run in this race due to an injury and had to undergo surgery and is now recovering. She did not have that. She simply had to set her standards on the clock. Would you say her strategy backfired in trying to take the race out so hard?
In a relative sense, yes, it did. As far as still a quality performance, 2:24 is an outstanding performance. I might add that woman in your screen from Norway had to suffer the difficulty of being a world-class athlete and the #2 woman in her country for 10 years, as Greta Weitz won every race that she faced that woman, Ingrid Christensen, against. And in 1984, she took on a psychologist who worked with her, Willie Raylo, who Dr. Kay Porter referred to. And within 3 months of working with a psychologist of mental positive thinking, she defeated Greta in the Norwegian cross-country championships for the first time and has gone on to surpass her in performances ever since. This woman, it was the first woman in history that you're looking at your screen to be the world record holder at 5,000 meters in the track, have the 10,000 meter, you're right, at the track, and have the world best in the marathon. This is the finest all-around distance runner in the world today.
She sounds like the Mark Spitz of running.
Good way to put it. Good way to put it.
The versatility, we talk about quick twitch muscle fiber, slow twitch muscle fiber. For her to be so talented in all those distances, it says something about her physiological makeup. 5 feet 6.5 inches tall, 110 pounds. Almost a slight athlete. She's not over 6 feet, as many athletes as they are on the women's side.
We've talked also about how fast she is still running. To show you the tremendous pace that she put forth early in the race, consider this. Her time today should still rank among the 10 fastest times ever run in the marathon by a woman, and she has slowed noticeably here in the last, I'd say third of the race. So I think her time will be under 2 hours and 24 minutes and change, and that's the time that was run by Greta in London yesterday.
If it is, it'll put her at about 5th, depending on where she finishes with the second. 2:21, obviously, is Ingrid Christensen's time in London last year. That's the world record of 06 as we look at the projected 2:17.50.
That's the time of, she's reached 25 miles at. She's under 2:18, so she's got about 6.5 minutes to go at that pace. 2:24, 2:25, superb time. Only on this course, I think Joan Benoit has been faster.
If she does finish at the projected 2:24, it'll put her somewhere between 4th and 5th on the all-time list with Greta Weitz's 2:24 performance yesterday in London.
Notice the crowds. One thing you hear about Boston, only New York rivals Boston for the size of the crowds. One thing's for sure, I've done studies in this, believe it or not, measuring the width and doing a lot, just playing with some numbers, and there's definitely nothing padded about a figure of at least 1 million people in Massachusetts that turn out in a very sophisticated way to cheer on everybody from all over the world. It's been a marvelous day so far. Congratulations to the BAA, all of the folks in Massachusetts who turned out for this, and also to the John Hancock Company.
This has not yet been confirmed, but I understand that in 4th place is Evie Palm in the Masters division.
Ooh.
So she's cooking. And some encouragement comes the way of Ingrid Christensen.
That is her husband. That is her husband, Arv Christensen, who is an engineer for an oil company in Norway, has to do a lot of traveling in his business, and took a week off to be with Ingrid here in Boston.
The mother of a 2-year-old son, Ingrid Christensen.
She has turned off, Leandra, off Commonwealth Avenue right now, is coming up, I believe it's Hereford Street, and will make the turn and come down the long 600-yard straightaway.
She is about 2.5, 3 minutes from the finish line at this point. The crowd does not yet have her in sight. She is at the end of Boylston Street. So at the finish line, they're not quite at a roar, but we'll hear that soon enough.
Interestingly enough, she said that she went into the Olympics and did not feel confident that she could win. She said, I don't know what the matter with me was, but I felt I had to do something. And I didn't feel as strong mentally as I should against Joni last year. But she said, I've gotten increasingly more confident about what I can do, and it's made me race better, as witnessed my victories over Greta and my ability to race on the track at world record pace.
Of course, the confrontation with Joni, you're referring to the Chicago's marathon, and it was a classic showdown between the two athletes. And Joan Benoit is here in Boston, and that poor gal has been crawling up the walls because she wants to run so bad, but the injury is keeping her out.
Ingrid Christensen, a woman who is key as a distance runner, is to remain injury-free. She has had no significant injuries now for 7 years. She takes 1 month off, pretty much a year. She said, I do very, very light training in the month of November. I do no weight work. But she said, when I train those other 11 months, I train like few other women in the world, up to 150 miles a week of running, sometimes on a treadmill. And in the winter, along with that training, she'll get out and do cross-country skiing for as much as 2 hours in a day. tremendous dedication that this sport requires. At the world-class level, it's not a hobby, folks. It's a way of life.
Ingrid Christensen, our leader. Carla Burskins is in second place. Bessières of Canada, the Bessières is in third. We've got this piece of information that Lorraine Moeller is in seventh place. And now our women's leader is in sight, and you will very shortly hear the roar as the reviewing stand encourages Ingrid Christensen to come home in the Boston Marathon for 1986. Our clock says 2:24:39. You see it there on your screen. She wants to be 2:26 so that she can get additional prize monies. Ingrid Christensen, 1986 Boston Marathon winner.
She worked hard.
2:24:54 puts her about 8th on the all-time performers list, despite the fact that she, again, had a tough time over the last half of the race. It must be painful, Leandra, you know, to just experience the sensation of knowing that your body can only run 2 of these a year and feel that you didn't do it right or it didn't work out for you as well as you'd like. She's a wealthier woman, mind you.
That puts it in a very good perspective, Larry. You can only try this twice a year at the very most. You only have so many years of peak optimum time out of your body. So it's a very select process, a very difficult race to try to improve, to try to beat the best in the world.
I might add, if you spend time with this woman, you're struck with her warmth, her friendliness, the speed of her smile, her balance in her life of other things that she does, and her attendance to her son, Gaute. You know, it comes across very quickly, and I think in this sport of track and field, and particularly marathoning, you need balance in your life because life is so intense to train at the world-class level.
That's it. Balance is so important. Ingrid Christensen, the winner of the 1986 Boston Marathon. We will be back with our live and continuous coverage of the 90th annual Boston Marathon. But first, these messages from our sponsors.
It's cold. Welcome back to ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1986 Boston Marathon, the 90th edition. The second place finisher on the women's side behind Ingrid Christensen, who finished just a couple of moments ago. Carla Burskins, second place. And a fine afternoon of running for her, too, George Hirsch.
Yes, it was. Carla did a great race. I think the story of Ingrid out there was a woman who had a goal. It was the world record. It was to get under 2:20. We saw her struggle in the late stages when she finally got hit through the hills. Then her experience and her great competitive desire, she shifted gears and she said, I'm here to win. And she held on and did it.
Dr. Paul Thompson, your evaluation of her victory today.
Tough run all the way. I think one of the things that has kept her around and kept her up there in front is her ability to avoid injuries. That might be related to her cross-country skiing during the winter.
So Ingrid Christensen is the women's champion, a new course record. Rob DiCostello is the men's champion, a new course record. Alan Massengale is with a smiling Ingrid.
Ingrid, congratulations. You had a bit of a struggle toward the end. First of all, how are you feeling now after that long, grueling race?
I'm feeling good now, but I'm not pleased with the race. I hope to run a little faster, but it was so hard to run with myself the whole way, so I didn't push. I didn't get to push me.
You were definitely coming here to win. You were definitely coming here to get that 2:20. You won, but you still expressed disappointment.
Yes, but because I hoped to run a little faster, but I won, and oh.
That's okay. What happened at the midway point when you started feeling a little tension?
I have a little problems with my stomach, and I don't get the hold the pace, so it was hard to be with myself.
Coming towards the finish line, the feeling today, how did that hit you when you finally realized you were toward the end of this and your biggest win?
It was a nice race and a lot of people looking at this race, but I hope to. I saw I couldn't break the 2:20, and I hope to take the world record, but that's what's going on. Then I hope to take this break John Benoit's record from here, and let's go. So I'm not satisfied with this race, but the coming races after this, so we'll see.
Well, Ingrid, you accomplished a great deal today. We thank you for your time, and we thank you for giving us this moment here at the Boston Marathon, the 90th Boston Marathon. Okay, back to race coverage.
Thank you, Alan. A year ago, that smiling face was the champion in London with a 2:20 championship. And George Hirsch, what have we seen here with Rob DiCostella and also with Ingrid Christensen in terms of the way they train and their abilities and their victories today?
Well, maybe what we take from it is Rob came very relaxed, in perfect shape. Ingrid might have been stretching a little bit. She had such a big goal. Going under 2:20 is just amazing. And maybe that kind of did her in a little bit.
Dr. Paul Thompson, we see two fine athletes and two athletes who have also dealt with speed and not just distance in their training.
Yeah, what that really is the speed is a reflection of what your power output is. How much can you do? If you can put out a lot, then you can run a race like this and not use anywhere near like your maximum. It's like a Porsche. A Porsche doesn't use anything near as its major output, or a Mercedes. When it's just driving around a street like this, it can go quite fast and not tax the engine. That's what these speed athletes can do in the marathon.
This is Boston, and Rob DiCostella has won on the men's side, but Mr. Boston has also fared well for himself. We're talking about Bill Rogers, who finished 4th in this year's marathon. He is standing by, along with Alan Massengale.
We are here with Mr. Boston. Bill Rogers, you're very happy about your finish today.
I'm very happy because I didn't think I'd make possibly even the top 10 here. John Hancock and the BAA worked together, the city of Boston, and they pulled together a tough field. And it was very hard for me today, but every marathon's hard for everyone who takes part, you know. But it was a great race, I think.
Well, Bill, you're not as young as you used to be, but you came darn close. I mean, 4th place finish.
I ran a conservative race, and the guys that went out tough and tried to win, you know, found it a little harder. Greg Meyer ran a very gutsy race. Pete Fitzinger, some of those guys ran hard. They gambled more than I did, but I was a little bit more of a chicken, but it helped me in the end, you know.
Your thoughts on Rob DiCostella going out in front today and leading the entire way? Quite an accomplishment.
Rob DiCostella has been the top marathoner in the world since about 1981. This puts Boston at the head of the pack again with a 2:07 marathon. Only 3 have ever been run, and it's an honor. It's an honor to be back here again, you know.
A lot of people might look to that today and talk about the weather conditions and say that might have helped. What do you think about the weather today? How did it affect the race?
I don't know what to say. It was fairly cool, but sometimes it felt like there was a headwind, and it was a hard race for me. But I guess DiCostella and Christensen, everyone has to be happy today, I think, you know.
We're very happy you stopped by. Bill Rogers, 4-time winner of the Boston Marathon. Always a pleasure. Now let's go back to more race coverage.
Thank you very much, Alan. Bill Rogers, Mr. Boston. He's 38, approaching 40. And Dr. Paul Thompson, how do you race after that age of 40?
Well, it's amazing what Bill is able to do. And the reason it's amazing is the following. If this is the marathon record or the world best in time and hours, here's what's happened as you get older. You get better into your early 20s and up till about 30, and then you decrease. You slow down over time at the rate of about 1% per year. Bill keeps moving down the records. This is a graph that was taken from the New England Journal of Medicine about 1980 or so. Bill messes up this chart almost every time. Bill and Carlos Lopes. People lose it as they get older. They degenerate a little bit. Their heart rate, their peak heart rate isn't as fast. Bill, for some reason, seems to be able to hang in there, and I think it's because runners are training longer and harder.
I tell you, George Hirsch, there are some people who believe that maybe Bill Rogers may run even better when he gets to 40.
Well, you know, I'm one of those, George, because I'm, of course, a big Bill Rogers fan, and he and I talk about it a lot. In a funny way, I think he's poised for turning 40. Jack Foster has a great world record for 40 and over, 2:11, and Bill never stops talking about that record.
Well, the word in 1986 is that Boston is back. Yes, Boston is back, but Bill Rogers is back as well. He finishes 4th in the men's division behind Rob DiCostella, who was the champion. ESPN's live and continuous coverage has